Well, this video is going to review one of my all-time favorite Bootstrap lessons, and that is the beginning introduction to function writing. Students, especially if they're new to programming, could find function writing a little bit daunting or maybe scary. Not the way Bootstrap introduces it. Also, you as the teacher get ready to earn an Emmy before this lesson is over. And so we're getting ready. You're going to be hamming this one up. The more you ham it up, the better off it's going to be. So we're going to start off. I'm going to kind of demo it for you a little bit. You want to get ready and tell them, oh my gosh, I just love green triangles. They are my favorite shape. Oh, I love everything about green triangles. The color, the shape, the way they look, all different sizes. Anything about green triangles I love. You're going to want to have a timer ready. You want to have your script ready in your mind. Because now what's going to happen is you're going to ask the students in Pirate to make as many of your favorite shape, solid green triangles, as they can in 2 minutes. Little tricks though, they cannot copy paste, sorry kids, and they cannot use the up arrow, double sorry students. They have to type triangle 5 solid green, and then the next one triangle 10 solid green. They have to type each one individually. And so get a timer ready and have them go. Yes, of course, when they're done, teacher, that was just way too frustrating. And yes, in training, the teachers say, well, that was not fun at all. Yeah, there's a point to this, right? Why the torture? Well, we're trying to make the point of why functions are going to make their life a little easier here in just a little bit. Yes, that's meant to be frustrating for a reason. Have them all shout out, how many triangles were you able to make when you had to type each one out individually, and keep track of how many they did, because we're going to compare that in a minute to something else. Not only that, now record down what was the code that you did write down. And this is where it gets important for us to begin to look at patterns in what they coded. And yes, you're going to see that they wrote down the number. Here is the thing that was changing all the time, and that's the important thing to begin to look at. What stayed the same and what changed? You got that triangle 30 solid green, triangle 12 solid green, triangle 500 solid green, and just circle what is changing. And then we see all of the other things stayed the same. So to have a conversation with them about their code, what stayed the same and what changed. And obviously the only thing changing here was the size of the triangle. Very important to keep that in mind for what comes next. So there obviously has to be a better way, teacher, than what we just did. That was horrible. And they have already learned they can define values. We've done that in a previous lesson. They could define GT as a triangle 65 solid green, but there's a problem with that. Yes, that's a shortcut, but that would give us the exact same solid green triangle every time, the same size. And that's not exactly what we were looking for. We wanted every triangle to be a different size when they were typing that earlier, getting as many different size triangles as they could. So that's not quite what we wanted. What we need to do is to be able to define a function, and yes, let's call it GT, green triangle, so that we could give it a number and it would make a solid green triangle of whatever that numbered size would be. So for example, if I say GT5, it would produce, as you see here, triangle 5 solid green. Well, let's get back on our acting stage and act this out. Right? Bring up a student to the front of the room and say, your name is now GT. Right? I'm going to give you a number. GT is going to expect a number, and it's important to bring this out. The GT is the function. You're going to expect a number, and what is GT going to produce? GT is going to produce an image. It's going to produce that solid green triangle of that size, of that number that I've given it. So we need to rehearse that. Got a couple little rehearsals over here. I say GT5. And then the student should repeat back, triangle 5, solid green. You don't need to have them repeat all of the parentheses and quotes here necessarily. GT20, triangle 20, solid green. Now have the students from the classroom shout out, GT100. Okay, we're going to get here real quickly the pattern, and we're going to see very quickly what's going on. But inevitably, some student will just say, 100. If they don't, I always like to bring this out. And then the GT student usually will try to say, triangle 100 solid green. I say, oh, wait a minute. Did they call on you? Did they call you GT? Just on the side, I just like for you to bring that out. The GT can't respond if GT hasn't been called out. If they typed 100 in Pirate, 100 would be all they'd get back. They wouldn't get an image. So bring that up. That we have to call out GT 100. Just a side note. Have a conversation after you've done a few of these. How does GT know what to do? Well, GT only has to focus on one thing. Really, GT knows in the back of their mind, I'm going to make a solid green triangle. And so they don't have too much to worry about except for listening for that number that comes from the other students in the room. And so it's not too much to have to process in their mind. They know the rest, solid green triangle. They just add in the number. And so bring that out, that's really what we want a function in Pirate to do the same thing. Tell it it's going to be a solid green triangle and use that code, and then just take in this number that we're giving it. It's the same thing, finding that pattern, what's changing, what's staying the same. Those examples that we just gave out in the class, GT5, triangle 5 solid green, GT10, triangle 10 solid green, and so on that I have given. Really important to show them, circle what's changing, and everything that's staying the same is very clear here. And we can see what's changing is that size. Well, let's give that thing that is changing, that is varying, we can call it the variable, and we'll give it its name, size. That's just a logical name here because that is what is changing, is the size. So we're going to say the size is what is changing. Just replace that number, GT5, GT10, and call it GT size. And wherever that number was, replace it with size. And as you could see down here, we have GT size and triangle size. Where that number was, 5 and 5, now has been replaced with the word size. Now in Pirate, the syntax is down here. It's just what we've done with the examples. We just need to tell it that we're writing a function. So the fun is going to begin. Fun begins, and we have that GT size, and you can see a colon there is after that. And then we've got triangle size, solid green. And, of course, the fun always has to come to an end. But we need to tell Pirate that the function has now ended. But there's your syntax for the function. It really flows very naturally from those examples that you've had the class act out. What used to be a scary thing to write a function shouldn't be now, because they have really seen how the pattern has flowed, and you just continually ask them what's changing, what's staying the same. What's changing gets the variable, and every place it has changed needs that variable name to be in it. There is a great workbook page that goes along with this, and I would not skip this because it seems silly, but it's not. It is definitely a good critical thinking activity, and the students get this mixed up. But you're saying, well, what is the domain of GT? You know, because I'm making a triangle, and so Kermit says, well, the domain at GT is number, string, string, because it's taking in a number, and then it's got its size, and then it's taking in a color and a mode or a style. Oh, but then Oscar said, wait a minute, no, GT is only taking in a number. And I like to do this with the students and partners or a group. Have a debate. Who is correct? Was Kermit correct or was Oscar correct? Have them think back to the acting that did. What did we give GT? Did we give GT, our actor in the class, did we give GT a number string when you were shouting things out in the class? What did you shout out? Oh, you only shouted out a number. GT behind the scenes already knew that it was going to be making that solid green triangle. It just needed the number. The function itself just needed the number. So good activity there. And then this lesson does end with you now applying that to evaluating some other shapes. As you see here in the middle, you make red square, and the students will go off into Pirate and make some additional shapes and test that in Pirate. But before they do that, this is where it comes down and makes this why a function is needed. They will evaluate GT in Pirate and make now, using GT, as many solid green triangles as they can, just doing GT5, GT10, GT20, GT30, and just do it in a minute. And they will see that even in 1 minute, they've made way more solid green triangles than they made before. And so this function has made life easier for them. And then one last thing that this emphasizes in this lesson is that those examples are very important in function writing, and that's why as we get further into function writing in the design recipe, examples are important for two reasons. Here you saw they are like showing the work. You know, we did those examples to figure out what should be happening in that function, what was changing, what was staying the same, helped us to determine how to write that function, didn't it? And as our functions get more and more complex, those examples are going to be helpful to us. So that's the basics. We're going to keep going with the design recipe in some further videos.